Okay, so I was a roadie for Rick Trevino and John Anderson.
Really?
Yeah, and I used to set up the stages and used to set up the mics because I had the voice for the mics. Like the Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
That's funny. So you like set up all the mics and set up
all
all,
the mics
oh
and
wow.
then like check, 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 1, 2, check, check, check.
That's
Three,
funny.
2, 1. 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1.
Are we recording?
Was that part of it?
All right, good.
Was that part of it?
I think, no, that's great. I actually was hoping we were recording.
Warning, this is not a podcast for those who have got it together. We are men seeking answers to the questions that have plagued our mind. Can we be undefeated?
All right. So, hey guys, I'm Burl Stricker. I'm here. This is our podcast to Positively Undefeated. I'm here with Elliot. Elliot, thanks for taking the time out. I gave you so much notice to this podcast.
You did, but you bought me a chicken fried steak.
Yes,
so
I bought him a
good.
chicken fried steak at the local Fred's.
Yes.
Which is really
Shout
good.
out to Fred's.
Yes, I think that's sponsorship for sure.
Yeah.
Sponsorship. Sponsor the show, please, Fred's. We need it. Okay, so hey, man, I've really only known you for I'd say a month, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, a few weeks. You just recently moved here to Elk City, where I live, and it's really been a pleasure getting to know you. In a short amount of time, I've gotten to learn quite a bit about you, and really, I feel like that we've definitely started this friendship, and I hope that friendship develops over time. I want to, I know you just recently, you moved from Kansas. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
and
correct.
then are you from Kansas?
I was born in Enid, Oklahoma.
Oh, okay. So you're in Oklahoma. But
Yeah.
how long did you live in Oklahoma growing up?
Okay, so I have been to 37 of the 48 continuous states.
Truck driver, right?
Truck driver.
Yeah.
And I've lived in probably 7 different states.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's just moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
I was at a time in my life where I was scared of what's going to happen next. And
How old are you?
I've just turned 40.
Okay. When's your birthday? In
August 1st.
There you go.
1982.
August 1st.
Yes, sir.
Well, so how long were you a truck driver?
7 years.
And what was the positive and negative? I have a lot of family members and friends. I'd say my 2 longest friends since high school. We still talk, very close. Both of them are truck drivers. I have several family members that were truck drivers or are truck drivers. What was the pros and cons of being a truck driver? Brian was a truck driver.
Yeah. Well, you'd probably understand this. Being a truck driver, one of the positives for a person that is wants to control everything, it's really good because you can determine what time that load is going to be there, or how it's going to get there, and so you're always in control. And if you're a control freak, like I am, sometimes, most of the time, I mean it happens.
Yeah. Well, I love to tell this story because my cousin, him and I were very close. He passed away now, but he was a truck driver. And I think he's one of the best truck drivers I've ever met, honestly. He was very experienced, he was good at what he did. So one day he decides, unfortunately, this was a semi-drinking incident, but I live out in the country and he decides that he's going to teach me how to drive a semi. And this was, of course, manual. Nowadays, I guess, my friend tells me that almost all of them are automatic. So
Yes.
I have a friend that teaches truck driving school now, but he also was over the road. And he's actually never driven a standard. He's only driven automatics.
Nah.
And he was just saying, he was telling me, I don't know if I could drive a standard. But so I get in this truck and we're talking about maybe a mile stretch down this country road. And my cousin's trying to teach me how to drive it. And I'm having tons of trouble shifting the gears, even though I know how to drive a standard vehicle really well. Grew up driving a standard, have no problem with that.
Right.
But pretty comical. I was struggling getting it in gear. Different concepts when you're shifting gear on an 18-wheeler than you would a vehicle, a regular car or truck. But so, did you drive a standard? Did you drive automatic?
No, I drove, the most common one that I drove was a Super 10. It's called a Super 10.
Oh, okay.
It's a 10-speed, and it's got the high and low gear. I mean, it's a nice setup for that. But I learned on how to drive like a truck and a semi, like a big truck, and when I was about 9 years old, living on the farm. And learned how to drive it was a 1963 Mack cab-over. Mm-hmm. And that's what I learned how to drive off of. And my stepdad told me that the engine will sing to you when it's time to shift. Mm. So you didn't have to use the clutch. Yeah. He said the engine will sing to you. And it took a little while to understand what it means.
And you don't really shift with the clutch in those trucks. No. Yeah, I didn't think so.
It's just starting and stopping.
Yeah. Brian, was yours an automatic or a?
With automatic. I started out with.
Yeah.
There you go.
So what brought you to Oklahoma? Kind of give us a little background of why you decided to move to Oklahoma, and I'm curious about the. Plus, you not only decided to move to Oklahoma, you decided to move to a small area, small town. So, did you live in a small town in Kansas, or was it what town did you live in Kansas?
Well, I lived in Lincoln, Kansas, for the majority of the time, but I moved here from Sylvan Grove, Kansas, which is not too far away from Lincoln, Kansas.
Yeah.
And I think it was like a population of like 300 or something. Mm-hmm. So, and then in town of Lincoln, there's about 3,000 people there.
Oh, so definitely smaller than this.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think the population of Elk City is like 12,000.
I really didn't want to move. There's too many temptations, too many in a bigger city. Mm-hmm. And I worked here like 23 years ago. I worked over here with my brother, laying sod on the side of the highways, the new interstates or whatever.
Yeah.
Called erosion control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And one of the things that really, I mean, you and I've heard you say this, that you found out that you had MS or multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
How long ago did you find out? How did you find out? And tell me about that. Because I mean, you're 40.
Yeah.
So that you're pretty young to realize that you had that.
I'm 40 now. I was diagnosed with MS when I was 25.
Okay.
But the symptoms, everything that was going on, went all the way back into junior high. And when I started playing football my freshman year of high school, when I started playing football, I kept getting hit in the head. I was like dizzy all the time. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Mm-hmm. And so finally, I think it was my sophomore year, I had my first MRI. When I had the MRI, they found I think it was like 7 lesions that were on my brain. Mm. And they were trying to figure out what those lesions were. I mean, because it could be like a whole bunch of all different kinds of stuff. And when they found, like I said, they couldn't figure out what the lesions were. And by this time, I was pretty athletic. I was working pretty hard, getting my body into shape to get stronger and stronger. So that I thought maybe I was out of shape. That's why I was losing my balance and stuff.
Yeah.
But then, so by the time that my senior year, I had a lot of concussions. My fourth one actually happened my senior year of high school. I got hit and I got sideswiped, and it threw me for a loop. I'd done a complete 180-degree turn and landed, and I was completely knocked out. And so I remember waking up in the hospital. They done the MRI scan while I was passed out, and they seen that there was 10 lesions on my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they couldn't figure out what it was. So, after that, I mean, I still had some problems. I had some problems with my walking ability, my balance. And so I went through all these different tests. I went to ear, nose, and throat doctor. I went to the EKG, the EEG, there's like just every single test that you could possibly take, I took, and they still couldn't find the conclusive, like what was actually what it was. So then, the neurologist in Salina, Kansas, told me that I should get a spinal tap. Mm-hmm. If I get a spinal tap, it's going to come back on what it is.
Right.
So there was a week that was the most stressful week ever. I remember waiting for the results to come back from California, because it got shipped to California, and it came back as multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
And
how did that? I mean, you said 25. Is that how old you were?
I was 25. Yeah.
So, what was the doctor's prognosis whenever he presented this to you as, okay, you're 25 years old, you have multiple sclerosis? What was his prognosis for the future?
Well, okay, so we'll just say it this way: there's over 2 million people diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Okay. Is there different levels?
There's no two the exact same. Okay. So everybody's different, and different things affect different people. Mm-hmm. And but yes, there's 4 different kinds of MS. I can't remember some of them, but I have relapsing remitting MS. It means like I have a relapse, but I can go back to where I was before. Mm-hmm. There's secondary progressive MS. With secondary progressive, that means that you're pretty much incapable of really doing anything. Yeah. And when you have like a relapse or an exacerbation, and you lose part of your movement, you'll never regain that back. That's secondary progressive. And actually, that's what my aunt has, and she's 54. No, she's 60, and she's in a wheelchair. But she's been in a wheelchair for 13 years. But she has a very positive attitude. It's very inspirational. Just seeing that positive attitude she has, and I think I have it bad, but I know.
What's your symptoms now, like today? What are the symptoms that you can see that are a part of the multiple sclerosis?
Okay, and as of right now, like I have like overactive nerves, and sometimes when it's cold outside or it's really windy, you're like, oh, it's cold. Well, to me, it's like getting hit with a baseball bat, like on all exposed parts of my skin. It hurts, and then. I know that's part of MS, and then, okay, so the sister disease to MS is actually Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
And sometimes, like, I start shaking, like I can't control it. I just start shaking a little bit. So, but that's getting worse and worse over time, right? Worse, is that a word?
It works.
Okay.
If there's a grammar teacher out there, she'll remind us that.
Right. Right, yeah, the grammar police. So now I forgot what I was saying.
So you were talking about
that. Oh, the shaking. So I know, it's increasing more. It's more and more, and then just different parts of my body, like my legs and stuff. Like I can scratch my neck here, and like I can feel it in my legs.
Wow.
I mean that's just like the nerves. It's that. But that's a part. So, but the guy told me one time, it says, you may have MS, but MS doesn't have to have you.
Yeah.
And that's words that I'm trying to live by, but I'm human.
That must have been pretty devastating when you're 25 years old to get that kind of diagnosis. How did it affect you, like mentally? To at 25 years old to be told you have, because when I think MS and multiple, same thing with you. I'm sure with you, it almost sounds like a death sentence. Like I'm going to be wheelchair bound, or I'm going to be bed bound, or I'm going to be. So how did it affect you mentally?
Mentally, it caused me to find chemicals to put into my body so I could cope with life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really want to live life anymore. I mean, I went down so deep and to a dark place. And I remember, or let me tell you, my senior year in high school, I was 6'4", and I was 285 pounds, and I was 14% body fat.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, so I went from that to being 25 years old, being diagnosed with MS, and only thing that you can think of is all the negative. You hear that, and you're like, oh, all the different negative thoughts, and I can't think of positive thoughts. I mean, I think it's just human nature, but so it caused me to do things that I swore that I would never do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took me to the level that was bad. But then I was 27. From 27 to 29, I was 80% in a wheelchair.
Why? Why is that?
Because my balance and my legs, they just wouldn't work. Like they weren't supporting me. Like I had to go to physical therapy, and I pretty much had to learn how to walk again, like to use the stagnant muscles. That's what helps you keep your balance. They call them stagnant muscles. Mm-hmm. And getting those back into shape, letting your body tell it that, hey, this works again. And so for 4 months, I was in physical therapy, like a rehab facility, learning how to walk again and how to function. And then the rest of the time, for the 2 years, I was at home. I was in a wheelchair. Like 80% of the
explain
time.
that to me. So like, it's almost like you went into like the disease process, like really quickly. And then you're able to back it off or kind of go into remission. Is there something that caused in your mind that caused it to go at this fast rate where you're incapacitated?
Stress, anxiety, all the emotions. I mean, if I'm like stressing out, like just going through a really difficult time in my life, I mean, it just, yeah, it gets over.
So that it kind of, I find that very interesting because that was my guess, but I wasn't sure. That's why I asked the question. But I think about it, like, I don't think you hear about this a lot, but I don't think that we give enough credit to the idea that stress, anxiety, those type of things actually do create a physical, there's a physical effect.
It raises your blood pressure.
Yeah. I mean,
so
like a panic attack,
right.
Take a panic attack.
Yeah.
Truly, you can say nothing's going on, but yet there is something going on.
So scary. Those are, oh my gosh.
So did you have problems with like addiction before this time period when you found out you had MS, or do you feel like that started the addiction?
Okay. Well, so I grew up, my senior year of high school was in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And I remember that we used to have a lot of parties. We used to go to a lot of parties.
Yeah.
And when we were like 18, when we were underage,
yeah,
it caused us to. Sorry.
Tell myself.
It's time to pray. We didn't pray before we started, guys. I'm losing it here. Yeah, I forgot what.
No, so you started. You were basically partying before your.
Oh yes, and so when I was young, so my addiction goes back to all the way back to when I was in high school. I mean, then after high school, I mean, I just kept drinking, and then mm-hmm. I got introduced to other chemicals mm-hmm. I put in my body. So it's
So the addiction kind of process had already started, and then you find out you have MS, and that just aspirates it. In other words, it just really takes you down this road of a deeper addiction, or do you think that, what was the effect? Do you think that definitely had effect with your addiction and how you were coping with it?
Okay, let me go back to like what made me go to the doctor, and then he suggested I get the spinal tap.
Okay.
Okay, so I was sitting there eating supper, and then I was like, man, my body felt really weird, and I was like, I just need to stand up, and I started walking around, and I was like. Then the next thing I know, like my body just went completely rigor mortis or whatever, just went stiff, like I was planking, and like my wife at the time, she called my friend over. He was like a 380 pound guy. I mean, he's a big guy, and to help pick me up off the ground because like she couldn't even move me, and then but he couldn't either. He couldn't pick me up off the ground. So then had the ambulance come over, and then they tried to load me onto the gurney, like on my back. They tried to flip me over on my back because, like at this time, I'm laying on my stomach.
Yeah.
And then, but they couldn't move me over because my body, it would feel like I was getting like stabbed with a hot iron. Like my body it just hurt my body so much. So they take me to the hospital. When I'm on the hospital, I'm still laying on my stomach. The ER doctor comes over and he takes a needle and sticks the needle between my big toe and the second toe. And I guess there's a huge nerve that's right there. And when he poked both my legs. They did not move at all. I didn't feel it at all.
So he's looking for reactive, like
Reactive, yes.
Yeah.
And then there was nothing. So, right.
By the way, for you guys listening or watching live, we have a sweet little dog here that's kind of going in between us. You may be wondering what's going on down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the dog's name? I forgot.
Flash.
Flash. Yes, Flash is a big old baby.
Yeah, he's a basset hound. So he's a baby. So I go up to the fourth floor and they put me up there, and these are people that have had like head injuries, and that was probably one of the scariest moments that I went through. That was probably the scariest because of where I was at.
Yeah.
And not really being able to function correctly, have your body function correctly. I think that took me down into the deep dark, and I was prescribed painkillers.
Yeah.
And then that's what really got me back on my addiction to alcohol, because that was easier to get than sometimes the pills. Because I mean, I was taking like 90 milligrams of like Percocets. So I mean, it's crazy.
So that one. How long did that? Sean, what's up, Sean? How are you, brother? My friend Sean's listening. I like that. So, again, back to if you look at that, it's like, man, at 25 years old, I'm sure you're depressed. Depression really starts helping, or putting the addiction out there more than was really going on. Like relationship wise, were you in a relationship, like girlfriend, married? What was your relationship like at that time?
At that time, I was married, and I was married for about a year, or a little over a year, because we just got back we got married in Mexico. And then just right after we got married in Mexico, then that's when everything started happening. And then that's when I got the diagnosis that I had MS. And the relationship didn't last long after that, because I lost who I was. I mean, I did not know who I was anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just glad that things happened the way they did, or ended the way they did, and not the way that, especially my last relationship ended, because I fell back into the addiction part of it.
Well, it's understandable that finding out this diagnosis at such a young age had a profound impact on you. I mean, that's very clear. And I can imagine, like, when like a lot of men put their self-worth in what they do. So like career and work, it's like, and it's like their identity, and it's not obviously always a good thing, but you can imagine I can imagine if you weren't able to work and really do the things that you would normally do physically. I mean, we're like, men are considered like the provider normally, we're looked at as the provider.
Yes.
And so when I think about the inability to physically work, or to physically really even possibly take care of yourself, then what it must have done to like who you felt like you were, your identity, maybe kind of even your life's goals. It's like, oh, I can never accomplish any of the goals that I want to accomplish.
Right.
It's almost like, I'm sure at some point either you go deeper and deeper into this dark place, or you have to find a way to like refocus your goals. And how long did this process of like you going to go into this deep, dark place, how many years, or how many months, or how long before like you felt like you got a fresh start and you started looking at it differently?
Okay. So I was diagnosed in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And so from 2005 to 2014, because that's December 9th of 2014 is when I went to treatment for my addiction to pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
I finally got to the point where I started to lose everything again.
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like I was falling back down into the rabbit hole when I was like first diagnosed. I felt like I fell back into that spot. And once I was there, or once I realized that I was there, I started to notice that jaundice was underneath my finger. Like I seen it in my fingernails, and I was so swelled up. Because I had so much, because I drank a lot of beer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally I was like, well, something's got to change. And then somebody said, hey, there's this treatment center, go to this treatment center. So I went there, and it was life changing. So
you have different opinions. People have different opinions about treatment centers, rehabs. So for you, what was the positive about you going to a rehab or a treatment center first? I'm curious what the things that you've really gleaned from that, because some people have horrible experiences when they go to rehab. I mean, lots of people are scared to get help,
right?
Because of their preconceived notions about what it looks like and what the treatment. And there must be thousands of them.
Right.
So if your experience isn't going to necessarily match somebody else's experience anyway, but I'm curious what the positive of that experience that you got from it.
Okay. So probably the one thing that I remember when I was really excited about treatment was as I was eating 3 meals a day. That done so much to me, like just mentally, to eat 3 meals a day and be around other people. I don't recommend going to a co-ed treatment center, but I really didn't have a choice at the time. But I mean, I don't recommend it. But I mean, it was a great experience, and having other kids, like having kids there that are younger than you, that, I mean, they're there because their family is trying to take care of them. And it was the first time in 7 years that I seen my family when I was in treatment. And it was during Christmas.
Is that because of your addiction and just what had been torn apart with the relationships?
I ended it. I was like, you guys are not making sense to me anymore. So see you later.
Yeah.
And they knew I was in my addiction. My addiction was taking over control of me. So
back to the 3 meals a day. Is it because before treatment that was it a money issue, or was it basically because you were so wrapped up in your addiction that you were not taking care of yourself and eating properly and eating like when you should? Is that about right?
Yeah, the inability to take care of yourself, like eating, that was my biggest thing, my biggest problem. And I remember that I would leave excellent AA meeting. I would leave an AA meeting, walk down to the bar, and drink until about 3:00. And then at 3:00, then I would go down to this Italian restaurant and have one of their salads. I'd eat a chicken salad. And that's all I would eat. Then I'd go back up to the bar and drink until they kicked me out, or my wife came and got me. Whichever one came first.
Did you ever during this time period or other time periods, but I would say specifically during this time period, did you ever contemplate suicide?
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Well, okay. So when you're have the diagnosis of having the MS, after being diagnosed, I mean, you mentally, like, you just shut down mentally. And then, if you shut down mentally, it's only a matter of time before you start shutting down physically. And, when that happens, I was glad that when I was diagnosed, I was told that I should go to AA or my first wife was going to leave me. And so that's the reason I started going to AA, but that's the only reason why I really didn't fall into that deep, dark rabbit hole is because I got that little mustard seed of faith that they talk about, and it manifested into something that was inspirational to me at the time to keep me alive, to keep me going. But I'd say that, and 5 minutes later, I'd go back to thinking about suicide again. So, I mean, it was a constant battle. And then at one time, I just got almost fed up with it.
When you hear your story, it's like, it does sound, I could see why it would sound hopeless. You know what I mean? Because again, we're talking about the future. We're talking about goals that you might have wanted to accomplish. It might have been even relationship, marriage, that was starting to fail. And, of course, depression and even thoughts of suicide. I'm curious, and I know that there isn't a one-trick pony. There's not a one answer that really changed. But if you could name a couple or a handful of things that really made such an impact in your life that you think, even if it didn't immediately change things for you, but if you look back and says this was monumental in changing you and changing maybe your mental part of it, the circumstances, can you think of something that was just instrumental? I mean, it could have been treatment. It could have been, but do you have a couple of instrumental moments that really made a difference for you looking back? That were like turning points, I guess is the best way to say it.
There was a guy that I was in treatment. I think he was a counselor, maybe he was I don't remember what he was, like a peer mentor or something like that. He just come in there and was talking to us, and he said something, and it really made me think. He says, even the biggest guy that gets into a fight is nervous before he gets into the fight.
Yeah.
And that really kind of like made me really sit back and think about why am I sitting here overreacting, making myself nervous? And yeah, but that was probably the most profound thing that
you talking about nervous about going to treatment, or are you talking about nervous about getting better, or?
Well, no, I wanted to get better, but nervous about just life.
Life. Yeah.
And
the unknown of life.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It's, I
mean, what do you also, when you think about all those things, it's like, and again, I can think about in my own life, you have moments of like, where you might have revelations or, you can say just turning points, and that makes some changes. And then you have kind of a down period. My point is that through life, you have multiple things that like, this is a turning point for me. But I'm curious, like what did it for you? Like what like says, I'm done with this. I'm done with the addiction. I'm done with, like, where, I guess part of it is like, what was your rock bottom moment where you said, I'm done with this?
I had to say, when I looked at myself, I took like a picture of myself and seen how round I was and the color of my skin and the color of my nails.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what really made me say, I don't want to turn out like my grandpa.
Yeah.
Because I hated my grandpa when he was drunk.
Mm-hmm.
But now today, I mean, the overalls that I have on are represent him. So, I mean, because he used to wear these all the time. So,
yeah.
I mean, I love my grandpa, but at the time, I didn't give him the respect that I should have. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of one of the things that I needed to get over. But when I finally seen that I was turning into him, then I was like, things got to change. Yeah, something's got to change.
So you recently, going more to currently, tell me kind of like what's going on current in your life. It's like, I'm talking about just kind of like what you're working on mentally, what you're working on as kind of your life, and I'm just curious, like where you are today in your recovery and what's kind of all that. Where are you at in your recovery, I guess is the best way to say it.
Right. Well, and it's a good question. And I want to apologize too if I seem so scatterbrained or whatever during the interview. And just sometimes I get really emotional. Yeah. It starts to get emotional. But what I'm doing now, let's see, let's go back till June. I got kicked out of my house, and because I was drinking, and that caused me to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, I went really fast back down again. Because I just wanted to give up on things. Just wanted to give up on things. And then, so I went through a really rough patch, but one of the guys that I helped take him through the 12 steps, the 12-step program, he reached out to me and said, "Are you okay?" And I remember yelling, "No, I'm not. I'm not okay." And then ever since then, he came back to me and put God back into my life. He introduced me back into Jesus. He just was so inspirational because I remember I helped him go through the steps, and then he turns around and helps me like get my life back on track. So that was awesome. That's what the program is all about. But when I was trying to get back, we really looked at in 2 Corinthians in chapter 5, verse 7, it says that we walk by faith and not by sight. And then chapter 5, verse 17 says that you're I can't remember. I'm going to paraphrase it, and don't hate me for this. But it says, if all your sins are forgiven, if you ask Jesus to come into your life, all your sins are forgiven. And then, and I remember Matthew 6:31 through 34, it says, don't worry about tomorrow because today has enough worry of its own. No. And so that kind of helped me get back on to focused on God, on something that was bigger than me, that could help guide me into the right direction. When I found that, then I was still suffering from what my tongue had said, because I heard a lot of people, and I embarrassed myself. I was embarrassed to go back to a lot of the places, and it just caused me to become more isolated, more away from everybody. I tried to stay away from people, and so then that's what made me decide to move to Oklahoma. I've been wanting to move to Oklahoma for years, move back to Oklahoma for years, and just never had the opportunity to do it. And I had the opportunity, seen the opportunity, and I took it. And I came down here just to be more focused around other people instead of just myself, and not be embarrassed around other people or embarrassed to go to places because of the way that my tongue, that's one of the worst things. That's the Bible says in James. It's so small, but that's like poison to anything. So
what was your relationship like, if you had to say, growing up, and like your influence as a kid or young adult when it came to Christianity or to God, we'll say God, and then versus your relationship now? Tell me the differences. Was it like I've never been around it and now I was introduced to it, or I was around it and now it's differently? So I'm curious about your relationship and how that's developed over time.
Okay, so when I was younger, I was Catholic. I was a Catholic. I was baptized in 1989. I still got the little picture of like when I got baptized and stuff. And we used to go to church like 7 days a week. And we had to go like to the 6 a.m. service. And it was like, and my family was all like, look how good of Catholics we are. We go to service every morning. So it really felt like at the time, like it was just a persona that we were just putting on. That saying like, oh, we're good Christians or we're good Catholics so that kind of turned me off on God, on the whole God idea. The biggest influence that I had was only for this 1 year. This guy, because his name was Coach Diener. Marvin Diener at Central High School in Salina, in Salina, Kansas. He was the one when I was at 5'7" and I was like 325 pounds. I was so fat. But I hit my growth spurt in between my junior year and my freshman year of high school. Yeah. And he says, "Well, I need somebody like you to play on my football team." And to have somebody give me that kind of just acceptance, or looked at me and said something to me, it made me feel really awesome. Yeah. Because growing up, I mean, I've never met my real father and my biological father, and I've my mom's been married 5 times. So, I mean, there's no really stability in my life when I was growing up. No. So that caused me to act out too in a way that I shouldn't have. But we'll go back to Coach Diener. He said to me, he said, "I need somebody like you to play on my football team." And he had me on. I was the left offensive tackle, and that was. I think that was the first time I loved being in control. Yeah. Because I was able to learn the play, but I was in control of how the play was going to go. I was going to end. And so ever since then, I've been addicted to the control. So, but that was probably my biggest influence. And then, like I said, it was only just for that 1 year. Yeah. And then, I don't know if you guys know who Terrence Newman is, but he went to Central High School. So he went to the same school as I did. And he played for the Dallas Cowboys for quite a few years, played for the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. he set the record for the vertical, and he set the record for the most pull-ups in a minute. And me and another one of my good friends now, we've watched him do that together.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of inspiration that was around, but I had to say that the coach was the one that really inspired me the most.
So how's your relationship with God changed now? What would you say it was like now?
I'd say that, okay, I'll put it this way. Before I even get out of bed in the morning, before I take a drink or take anything, I sit there and I have a spiritual experience. And I talk to God and I communicate with him. And man, it just makes me happy just thinking about it. Like in the mornings, that's how I wake up. Is I try to have that spiritual experience, and I try to get that closeness, that connection with God, and that He knows that this is the path that I want to take, and He guides me on taking the right path, the right direction.
Yeah,
on that path. So, yes, my relationship with God is, I'd have to say, it's probably one of the best things I ever had, the closest things I ever had. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a pretty amazing story, really, and it's hard to fit it into an hour or less or whatever. It's hard to fit it into that.
Right.
I mean, one of the things I've been very impressed with you, it's like, man, I do think you have an amazing story. I really do. And, it's like, it's mind blowing to me to think at such a young age, again, that, dealing with that kind of news and the effect that it's had on your life. I mean, you brought it up. It's like, and there's all kinds of statistics brought up about, like, just start from a father not being around and how that, or a messed up family or an abusive family, and how that affects your life. And then you have people who have a perfect family and yet they still have problems in life, so, but it's interesting also that, like, at that young of age, you find out a pretty severe diagnosis, and then, of course, dealing with addiction, dealing with depression, dealing with thoughts of suicide. I mean, you just recently went to, one of your friends just recently committed suicide. And, you went back to Kansas and that's been, like, if you think about if that had happened when you were in your deepest, darkest place, that the outcome for you mentally is way different than the outcome is it for now, way different. And I'm like, I think that I'm interested, and I think people are interested. It's like, what's the difference between, an Elliot who, this would have thrown you back into, a turmoil. And yet, and I'm not saying this hasn't affected you profoundly, your friend committing suicide, because obviously it has, but I'm just curious I'm just amazed by the whole story, and my heart goes out to you because, as I've told you, dealing with suicide in my family, I've had friends that have committed suicide as well, and it's like it's a huge thing to overcome. It's like it does not make sense, and it's a huge struggle, especially if you're struggling internally as well.
It's really a good question, and I don't think I could answer a lot of it right now. I'm still trying to process. There's a lot of things I'm still trying to process, and I mean, I've been wearing this bracelet because. My closest friend, he was in the military, and he lost 7 of his brothers in the military because they suffered from PTSD, and they ended up taking their life. Yeah. And so I have this bracelet that says, "Don't give in to the war within," in veteran suicide. And then I also have another bracelet, and it says about mental health. And ever since I got these bracelets, I've never taken them off. It means so much to me to reach out to somebody that is that close to ending it all themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked into the hospital, like, I think it was 3 times, and they put me in the psych ward for a week. And if you're addicted to nicotine, I do not recommend going to a psych ward, because not in Kansas anyway. They don't allow you to use nicotine at all. They give you lemon heads to suck on. It doesn't do anything. But and you're locked in there. You can't go anywhere. So I mean, it's just like jail. I mean, but I had to go there twice. Back to back, because I was at the point where I just didn't care anymore, and I just wanted to end it myself.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, my friend reached out to me and kind of got me back onto the path of God. Mm-hmm. And I want to be there to help that person that is there in that spot, to help them get out of it. That's what I really want to do.
Right.
So I guess that's what inspires me the most to be is to be that guy that can help somebody else get through that. That's what I really want. Let me shut this off so that way it stops telling you that I got mail.
If you that's from that movie, You've Got Mail. Or was it, what movie was that? That's like an 80s movie, or?
No, it's
You've Got Mail, but the whole, that voice clip actually comes from.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I remember AOL was the big internet, whatever provider.
It took forever to connect. It was always busy or something. And
I think we are at the age where you remember that, but there's lots of people who don't remember AOL. I'm always amazed when you still see people who have AOL mail,
right,
or email. Or, like me, people say the same thing of me because I have a Hotmail, and it's not Hotmail anymore.
Right,
it's Outlook. And so, Elliot, I want to kind of wrap it up for the listeners and people watching that. But man, what would you have to say? What if you have somebody listening that maybe it may be any of those circumstances? Somebody that's listening or watching that is struggling with like depression, struggling with like thoughts of suicide, or you have somebody that has recently, same situation as you, that's been in that, like where they have found out some terrible news about physical or maybe a family member, and they're just or maybe they're struggling with addiction, and they're just at these deep, dark places in their mind. What's the best advice? What would you tell those people that might be listening and they're like, man, how can this help me? Like maybe they're watching or listening just because they need help.
Right. No, I appreciate you guys watching or listening for that part of it. One of the biggest things that I found out that I had a hard time understanding is I could take a resentment from 20 years ago, and it could be just somebody that slapped me, just slapped me across the face and said something to me. But now, if I had still had that holding on to that resentment 20 years later, then it's going to be like he pulled a gun out on me. That guy pulled a gun out on me. Yeah. So our mind is not our friend. Yeah. And usually when I'm in a bad mood or I'm just ready to just hang it up, just to give in to it, I try to think about changing my mindset. Because if I change the way I think about myself and I love who I am today, that's the first thing that I try to do every morning. And that's why I talk to God. I have that spiritual experience. I have the devotional that I get on there, and I say a lot of things on there, and it's true life. It's real life. And I mean, it just don't give up. Just don't give up. Yeah. I mean, it's not worth it, because all the people that's affected by a decision that you've made or that you're making or how you're treating other people. That hurts. And I had a guy that said, in life, and when you take a hammer or take a nail and put it into wood, and then you pull that nail out, you still have a hole there. So it's easy for people, or people can forgive, but they'll never forget.
Yeah.
And how bad it hurts me right now to see where other people seen me, we'll say like 9 months ago. Then I see that through somebody else now. I'm glad I did not go to those extremes. But like I said, it all started with that little mustard seed of faith, a little mustard seed of hope.
Yeah.
And I watered it, and it manifested into something beautiful.
I completely agree. It's funny because like the podcast is called Positively Undefeated. And really, I like the idea of undefeated. And I look at somebody like you, and it's like, even though, again, I only know a part of your story, and I look at somebody like myself who struggled with thoughts of suicide, who struggled with addiction, struggled with all kinds of things too. And yet, here's the thing, like I look at you and I'm like pretty happy because you can positively say that you are undefeated. I mean, it's just true. And part of it's like seasons change, you know what I mean? And part of that, like the seasons change, it's like it may be really weighing down on you right now, but tomorrow it's another season. You know, it's like, if you think about dealing with the diagnosis of MS or dealing with the diagnosis or anything, a death, it's like those seasons change, and if you can wait it out, if you can literally, have, like you talked about this, the faith of a mustard seed. In other words, let God's grace, like believe in it, have some faith in it, allow him to help transform you one moment at a time.
Right. I just want to say, there's one thing that I kind of disagree with what you said, and it was about the undefeated part. I think that I don't want to be undefeated, because when you think of undefeated, that's perfection. I mean, that's perfect. You had a perfect season. You're undefeated. And then I got a tattoo on my arm, and it means progress, not perfection. And but that's what it's about. I don't want to be perfect. Right. I don't want to be perfect at things. And I don't want God to heal like the thorn that's in my side, or the crown, or the marks that I have on my body. I don't want him to heal me from that, because it's experiences that I have in my life that other people do not have. So I walk around, I may be defeated today, but I'm focused on the right path. I'm being a channel of God's love. And like it says in the St. Francis prayer, it says, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, may I bring love. I won't say all of it, but whenever I'm in trouble, whenever I'm having a hard situation, I just say that. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. Yeah. And where there's hatred, usually it's in my own head. I have so much hate inside my own head. So,
well, I think that, and I agree with what you're saying, no disagreement there, but I think that, we're looking at the definition of undefeated a little bit different. When I think about undefeated, I'm not dead.
Okay. Yeah.
And I haven't quit.
Yeah.
So when I think about undefeated, what I mean by like the title of the podcast is that I haven't quit yet. I mean, I've been defeated, come back up, done it again, done it again. I mean, you hear stories of guys like, for example, relapsing, done it, but they're still trying. They're still willing. And so when I think about undefeated, what I'm looking at is a slightly different twist on it. And that twist is that, I hate to even say this, but that's truth, with my cousin, the last, person close to me that committed suicide, he's defeated, done. He has no more opportunity. And I want to show the world that you still have opportunity.
Yes, yes.
You still, and even though I may feel defeated today,
yes.
but the ultimate defeated is quitting.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying?
I get it. I get it.
And same thing with you. What you're saying, though, is the same thing, is that we are going to have defeated moments. We're
Right.
going to have, and we are. I mean, we may go through a months
Yeah.
or years of feeling very defeated.
You can ask God right now, why am I going through this right now?
Yeah.
This hurts me so much. But I guarantee in 5 years, you look back on the situation you're in right now, and like, that's the reason I went through that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I'm dealing with it again now.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, Elliot, I sure appreciate it. Anything that we missed that you want to talk about, or that you think is important? Did I miss anything that comes to mind?
Just don't give in to the war within.
Yeah, I like that. Don't give in to the war within. I like it.
Because, yeah.
What if people listening or watching would love to connect with you? What's the best way for people to connect to you? It could be an email, it could be phone. People don't necessarily want to give your phone number out like this, but it also may be social media that you're into. What's the best way people connect with you?
Well, honestly, and probably one of the best ways is email. And if we had somebody that ran the closed caption, we could just put that on the screen.
We got Brian.
There's a part-timer over there.
We got Brian.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yeah.
We need a title. What's it? Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just elliotswart@yahoo.com. That's ELLIOTTSWART@yahoo.com.
Great. Well, brother, I sure appreciate you taking the time. I mean, and I mean this. I think that since I've known you, you've been a great inspiration to me. I love your story. I think that it reminds me daily about that, that I'm not the only person on a journey. I feel like that there's some fellowship there because you're on a similar journey, not exact.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like that, if I'm struggling with something, that you're somebody who could understand that and could maybe get some wisdom in that. And so I want to thank you very much.
I want to kind of comment on what you just said. And one of the things that I would have to say that's also very inspiring is when I am at my deepest level and I really can't pick myself up, and I can try to pray to God or try to do the next right action, but I keep talking myself out of it, like I'm not good enough. Just quit. But I got to stop and take a look back and see what I'm grateful for. Mm-hmm. I'm breathing today. I can move my fingers. I can move my toes. Those are things to be grateful for. Yeah. And as long as we're awake, we have a purpose. I mean, there's a purpose why we're here. There's a purpose why we're awake and doing what we're doing. Yeah. So don't ever think that you're not enough. Yeah. Because you are. I mean, you're still alive.
Well, we talked about it today, and we've there's lots of information about this, is that like something like alcohol or drugs gives you, it feels like initially that it gives you what you're lacking. That's the whole point. That's why it becomes addictive. That's why it becomes a coping mechanism. Those things are very normal. And then quickly, I wouldn't say quickly, sometimes it takes years, but at some point, that substance turns on you.
Right.
It turns. And it turns from, it used to maybe give me confidence. It used to give me whatever it is, feeling like I'm wanted and needed and whatever. And then when it flips, that's when it goes bad. And you realize that we know it instinctively that the substance would never be a good substitute for what you're really looking for. And you mentioned it, and I think it's so true. It's not even, it could sound cliche, but really God designed us to literally have him be able to meet those needs. Right. And I mean, it's humanly normal for us to look to our parents to help meet those needs. It's very normal for like a guy to look for maybe a woman to meet those needs. It's like we can go all on the gamut, or look to a substance or material or whatever to meet our needs. But ultimately, it's like, that's why it feels so good. And it's also, there's an answer. And the answer is, it's like going back to the way God intended us to meet those needs. It's going back to that. And sometimes it takes a long time to realize that. And
I like this analogy that was given to me one time. And it says, I can pray to God for a chair. I can pray to God for a table, for a desk or whatever. And God will not provide me with a chair, with a table, or with a desk. He won't provide that for me. But he'll provide me a tree. So I can take that wood that I get from the tree and make a table or a chair or whatever it is. I had to use my own instincts on how my own imagination of what I can do with that piece of wood. And it's just like in life. Like what I'm going through right now. I'm still alive. I want to do these things and I want to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to me where I want to go in life. And
that's good stuff. Well, and you think about it, God gave you those abilities. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that it's like the true picture of like a bond, a relationship, a true picture of the way God designed it is that it's not just God doing everything. It's in conjunction with you.
Right.
And I think about it, God, a lot of times in the Bible, he correlates marriage and our relationship with God. And I think that that's where it comes from. You're not going to just in a marriage have one person that's responsible for everything, that's doing everything, not in a healthy relationship.
Right.
And so in that healthy relationship, you both have a part. But in our worldly, we understand that. But in the spiritual, it's like when you realize that even God gave you the gifts and the abilities that you have. And part of it's like, I love this word, it's like usefulness. You know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes in our life, we forget our usefulness. And that's why I think like through a program like AA and other items, it's like one of the biggest thing is help somebody else.
Right.
Why? Because you get out of yourself and you help somebody else. Well, in the same concept, it's like God wants us to get out of ourself and he wants us to be a part and realize our usefulness, and it's usefulness that he actually gave us. You know what I mean?
It's in the Bible, it says that too, that we had to give away our spiritual, like we had to lead other people. And it's just, that's what's the great thing about AA. It's so they say it's spiritual based or faith based, but I mean, it's just
spiritual.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. The avenues that really made me understand how to find God, how to find that peace inside of myself. And the serenity. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that prayer. Just like in the Our Father, there's a lot in that prayer too.
Okay.
So.
Well, Elliot, I appreciate you, brother.
Yep.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I love hearing your insights. And, I think that it's just a good reminder for me that, that, like I said, there's other people out there that are struggling and other people out there that are also finding hope.
Right.
And so thank you so much.
Well, I hope you welcome me back, and hopefully your listeners welcome me back, and we'll see what happens.
Sounds great. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Positively Undefeated. If there was something in this show that resonated with you, please share the show with your community. If you want this show delivered each Monday morning to your podcast app of choice, please subscribe or follow. And if you'd like to get a hold of Burl, please do so by going to burlstricker.com/contact.